I'm Amber Leidick, your host, and this is the Art of Equine Alchemy podcast. This podcast bridges the gap between science and spirituality in the equine industry. Through healing journeys and real stories shared by courageous and unfiltered individuals at the forefront of these shifts, we explore how they reclaimed their power, found their voices for themselves and their horses, and how the work they do paves a road that gives permission for everyone else to do the same. Our intention is to lead a shift within the equine industry that challenges outdated traditions and methods that no longer align with our updated understandings of the horses and the humans, mind, body, and spirit. Our mission is to create an expansive platform and community, online and in person, to connect with conscious and compassionate people in the equine industry who have the courage to speak up on the behalf of the horses. Thank you for being here. Together, we can be the voice they do not have. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Art of Equine Alchemy podcast. I am Amber Leidick, and I will be your host today. And today we are sharing space with Dana Lovell. And she is somebody that I think we just started, I don't know, social media, man. We found each other, and I was like,
Yeah,
I don't know who you are, but I see your page and I love you. So just followed you, I guess, over the last couple years, maybe even. Um,
it has been. And I remember a very distinct moment where you shared something along the lines of trying to find that balance between the doing,
mhm,
what you were doing and then what you learned felt better and right. And I just
mhm.
remember that resonating and sending you a message and being like, "Yeah, me too." Like,
Welcome. Welcome to the uncomfortable space.
yeah, me too. I'm not alone in this space of uncertainty.
Yeah. So share with everyone our favorite question. What do you do? Who are you?
What do I do? So I live in Idaho, in Shoshone, Idaho, and I have a company called Running Tea Horsemanship. And I like my very standard answer to that question is I used to start colts for people. I love starting colts and putting the foundation on young horses and setting them up for life, regardless of what their job is going to be in the future. And I used to do that a lot. And I took on problem horses, the horses that I was the person people called when they had tried everything else. And it was kind of like, well, Dana gets weird and she gets results. So let's call her. And I really found a lot of joy in getting to know the horse and getting through that and making the change. And right. And at the time, everybody's like, oh, wow. And the praise of it was rewarding to the ego and it felt good and it really felt good to help the horse. And but the more I did that and I'd send them home and I'd get calls 2 weeks later of people saying, well, the behavior's back. Or my horse sat for 6 months and we took him out. And it just started to realize no matter how much I helped the horse, and I could get a lot done with the horse, that if I didn't help the human to help the horse and the human wasn't part of it, that, for lack of a better way to put it, almost felt like it was for nothing,
Mhm.
and it wasn't fair to the horse. Like they had this wonderful two-way conversation and communication and found joy in the things they were asked to do. And then that all changed and it just didn't feel good, but it paid the bills.
Mhm.
And in that space, I was also trying to learn who I was and what my identity was as a horse trainer for the public. I would parrot and repeat all the things that the big clinicians said. And so that's what I did. And I would say things like, I love horses. I don't like people. People suck. People are dumb.
This is this is why I felt drawn to you because it literally everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, 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 right. Because
right.
that
Well, when you were sharing with me
that
previously, same thing. And so, and then when I, and then so I had this realization like, well, actually, and it kind of crept up on me. I don't hate people. I actually really love people. And I love having, as much as I love helping the horse and the human be seen, or the horse be seen, I do love having the human also be seen,
Mhm.
because then to get through to the human, we can help the horse. And so that's what I did. What I currently do, and again, my stock answer is I help human and horse communicate in a way that makes sense to each other and feels good and offers a shame-free space to explore what they've always felt and hear and have questioned. and to set everybody up for a safe, successful, and joyful way to reach their goals, whether it's somebody who has a young horse that they're developing, or coaching people who show in ranch riding or dressage and eventing. And so that's what I do now here at my place. I have a really small operation. I have 3 pens that I save for horses to come in. When I do have outside horses, it's explicitly that the human has to also be involved and be willing to go there. Very rarely do I just take a horse and put 30 days on it and send it back. I just don't do that anymore. So that is what I do. I have recently, in the last 3 years, have gone on my own journey of just really exploring what motivates me as a human, what drives the things that I do what I do, why I'm attracted to the horsemanship that I am. I remember having that epiphany moment where I advocate for the horse to be seen and heard. Oh, see, this is what I was talking about choking up. And realized, after having a conversation with a fellow trainer, that it was because in my youth, in my developmental years, I did not feel seen or heard,
Mhm.
which is what really drove that desire to help the horse. And in my youth, also realizing that the horse, right, there was no hidden agenda. Like, the horses were always there. They meant what they said. They, you know, the feedback was honest and there wasn't a hidden agenda. And that was a big realization for me, that that is why I was attracted to that, and what really helped connect then the helping the person part.
Mhm.
And that got me where I am today. So I've been working on going down that path, which then has made it even a space for being more empathetic to help others. Like, it helped me to understand myself, has then in turn helped me to understand others. Like, similar, like when we're judging others, in defense of, they say we're judging ourselves, right? And there's an element of that. I don't think that's always the whole picture, but realizing that our behaviors and our responses are based off of our previous experiences, and the things that and the way we felt before, during, and after an interaction. And sometimes it's not entirely conscious, and therefore open that door to have empathy, as much empathy for the horse as the human as I did for the horse.
Mhm. Yeah. I feel like a big part of that is that's that reconnection back to yourself before you can really connect with anyone else, horse or human. And I think that
Yeah,
sometimes you say that and people are like, what does that even mean? And it's like, do you know how you feel about certain things? Like, really, do you know why you feel that way? It's like that
right.
getting to know yourself, such a foreign concept to me, like several years ago, until I started to dive into it because I didn't have a choice. My horses were like, it's time
It
for
is
you.
time. Well, and it doesn't feel good. It's
No.
uncomfortable, because when you shine the light on the things that you've avoided, or
Mhm.
you create stories, for ourselves, people do what we do it for our horses, why something is the way it is. I had a clinic goer once ask me, how come other clinicians don't explore these types of things? And I said, well, because it's a lot easier to make it happen and have everybody feel like they were leaving feeling like they were
Mhm.
successful, and they did the things and they made it happen, and it was big and extravagant. Like, that is easier to charge a ton of money for than to say, all right, everybody,
Mhm.
this is going to be uncomfortable, and we're going to reflect, why is this really happening? Why does your horse walk all over you? Why do you have a problem creating clear, consistent, and healthy boundaries?
Mhm.
And because it doesn't feel as good to go there.
Mhm.
And it takes strength and readiness within ourselves, and then also setting ourselves up with the right environment to do so, being supported by the right type of people who are going to serve you in your goal and support you in a healthy way, and not have their own agenda, which then
Yeah.
just spirals into a bigger mess. So it's a hard one to do.
Yeah. And that's the piece of when I would try to explain that to people, where it's really easy to go clinic all around and have people be very impressed and feel really good when they leave with their horse who had these big changes, and not to say that that's not valuable, because I do think some of that sticks, and I do think people get clarity from it, and you're only
Absolutely.
doing as much as you can. But then you have to look at, is it sustainable? And it's like,
Right.
no. And the stuff that is sustainable isn't always necessarily fun and exciting to watch. And it, like you said, it is uncomfortable, but all the tears and the like realizations at the end, it's like, oh shit, I'm leaving like 1,000 times lighter. And then also the horses get to feel that like vulnerability and rawness and authenticity within their, human partner. And it's like just that alone is like unravels so much and also can solve a lot of the issues they came with.
Right, and that will never stop amazing me as much as I've educated myself and I see things happen, some that are explainable or over and over again, it will
Mhm,
never stop amazing me how such a small shift
mhm,
can have such a huge impact. There can be such
mhm,
a big change to where it looks and feels like magic because it
mhm,
is so drastic.
mhm.
And people are like, "Well, wait, but we hardly did anything." It's like, "Well, you've quieted your storm, so you feel a heck of a lot better to be around, and now your horse wants to."
Mhm. Yeah.
And it'll never stop being awesome.
Mhm. Yeah. So if you were to look at, a horse or a situation that was really significant for you that you feel like, well, that it didn't feel great, that it felt like everything was kind of falling apart, or it ignited this, like, I need to do things differently within you. Is there something that you can kind of draw on and remember that feels significant to you?
In 2015, I had a horse in for training, a young mare for somebody. It was just a simple start. I had her for 30 days. I had done my groundwork. At that point in time, I was very much right. If you can move their body parts, you have control of their minds. And I went to ride her and I got on her and we were warming up and she was great. And I asked her for a lope and she broke in half, went to bucking. She planted her front feet and rolled back, and I went rocketing over her shoulder and I scorpioned. I landed with on my chin and the rest of my body came over me.
Mm,
And my husband was watching and he thought he had just watched me die. And I broke my neck. And so he came over and got me stabilized, went to the hospital. And during that time, I had broken C1 and C2 but fortunately did not break all the way through the vertebral body. And so I was in a neck brace. I was on pain meds. Like that's my I was high on narcotics, laying on my couch, revisiting everything. And like when things happen that don't feel good or were scary, we replay them over and over and over again. Like what happened, what went wrong, what could I have done different? I had people messaging me, sharing their perspectives, like you should have done more groundwork or that horse wasn't ready. I I took it all in. I didn't even know what to do with it. I had it all in there, and then somebody had gifted me, Steve Peters' book and Martin
mm,
Black, The Evidence-Based Horsemanship, and I started reading that just 'cause I had no other choice but to sit on my I was grounded. Like,
mhm,
I just the universe went and put me on my ass, and I remember learning then more about how horses work physiologically and psychologically in a pretty easy to digest way,
mhm,
and I went, "Oh." And that's when I had the big realization that just because you can move their feet doesn't mean you have their mind. And just because you can influence their mind doesn't mean you have their feet.
mhm,
And during that time, I really questioned, am I going to continue to be a colt starter? Because at the time, colt starting was my identity. I was Dana Lovell, the colt starter.
mhm,
I started colts for dressage riders. I started colts for the local cowboys. That was my livelihood and my income and how I supported my family. And I had everybody saying, well, and doctors telling me if you get back on and you come back off again and you happen that's to break your neck again or have another accident, like you could paralyze you, you're a mother. How could you do that to your children? I had family members uh, telling me that if I actually cared about my family, I wouldn't start Colts anymore. And so I was in this crisis of identity.
mhm,
And when I started to question, do I know what I'm doing? Like, did I miss the sign? And I had people mentors telling me, oh, horses give subtle signs. You must have missed it. There's never an accident. I was like, wow, so I suck. Cool.
mhm,
As well as, meds influencing the mind as well. And kind of spiraled in this space of wonder and being like broke open, but also
mhm,
depression. It was a really interesting space to be in. And that's when I was like, I'm going to educate myself. And then I started to find other resources that gave explanation to things that I always felt,
mhm.
but I didn't know how to put into words. And I started to find, because I was slowed down and I wasn't in the everyday monotony of being the traditional trainer, I did have that time and space to explore other resources. I was like, "Oh, I'm not alone." And I had
Mhm.
lots of time to scroll Facebook. Uh, and so, "Oh, okay." And that's when I was like, I there is more." And the things that I've always felt and known, but were afraid, the parts of my horsemanship that I was afraid to show and
Mhm.
expose, I became, because I felt that there was support and a camaraderie, even if I didn't personally know the people, I became braver about voicing it and talking about it and writing articles about it, typing it up. And then I can't remember what year it was, but it was after that I got invited to present at the Idaho Horse Expo. And it was one of those where, well, I don't do things traditionally. I have one of my favorite quotes is a really good reining trainer friend of mine who says, "Dana, you do some weird shit, but you can't argue with the results." And he said that to me that day. And when I decided I was going to do this and do the expo, and I agreed to it, and that kind of fueled me through that. And that's when I had that battle of like, okay, do I do trailer loading where we run their feet around and make it suck to be out on the outside, but they can rest on the inside? Because that, I was like, I know I'm really good at that. I have great timing. I can get that done. People are like, "Oh, wow, it's amazing."
Mhm.
But it just didn't feel right. And so I was like, you know what? I have nothing to lose. I wasn't being paid. It was just a spot offered for exposure. So what do I have to lose? I'm just going to go out and be weird and be me and talk about what I know feels to be truth to me. And maybe it'll speak to somebody else in the same way that I found resources that spoke to me and showed me that there were other people who thought the same way. And sure enough, I went out there. I was terrified. I was shaking. I could hardly speak. It took me a while to get the words out, and I went out in the main arena with hundreds of people around watching, and I got weird. And I couldn't even tell you what I talked about now. I was just so blacked out, but I walked out of the arena and people came around, and I could feel the genuine intent behind their words, thanking me for sharing what I did and sharing how they didn't feel, alone now, and how incredible it was. And after that day, it just opened up this door of just this amazing energy that trajected forward and pushed me into what I've created now and continue to create. And it started with me getting literally, broken and thrown on my ass and feeling like it was legit the end of the world.
Mhm.
And that, I remember saying, horses are my fire. They light my fire. And if I don't do horse training or work with horses or ride colts, my flame's going to go out.
Mhm.
Which also felt really selfish to say, because I am a mother of 2 children. I am a wife, who has a partnership with somebody else who also has feelings. And so it was a really ugly struggle within myself, but it
Mhm.
it ended in this, opportunity to do what I do now. So
Mhm.
that was probably the big one, and there's all those smaller ones, but when presented with that question, that's what came to mind,
Mhm.
'cause that was the big moment where I lived in my truth. That was it. When I stopped trying to be somebody else, using somebody else's quotes, trying to have a specific step program, which was also really scary, because people love structure's great. It keeps us accountable. It gives us steps to follow. There's predictability, but it was just like that. But that doesn't work for every horse. But then I was like, but how could that be right when so many other people are doing it and it works just fine, right? And it was a weird thing to have to share with people. I was like, I don't always believe in step-by-step things. It doesn't always work that way. But that experience gave me the confidence to explore the thoughts and put them into words and share them with other people.
Yeah, it's like the universe's timing is always so spectacular.
Yeah, that's if life has taught me anything, it's that, right? That the universe is always setting things up just the way they need to be, even when it sucks.
Yeah. I feel like usually those times it's like that it's always those moments that you start to question, who am I and what am I even doing?
Yeah.
Where things really fall apart. And And the universe says, like, yeah, we did give you like little nudges. There was nudges, and then you didn't listen, and it's time now. So here you go. You don't have a choice. But I do believe even in those moments, like you still have a choice. And if you already know ahead of time before you have these really hard situations happen to you, that this is happening for me. I just don't know how yet. And while it does feel like shit, if I continue to go, wait a minute, what is this teaching me? What is this teaching me? What am I supposed
Yeah.
to be learning? I
What
think the
can I
big,
learn from this?
yeah, because you don't want to have to learn it again. And you will.
Yeah,
It'll
let's
keep
do this.
happening.
Let's do this once. Well, right, just like I mean, for reals, but like with horses, there's always my both, especially my kids love it when I compare everything to horse training. It's their favorite. Just the parallels of like when the universe, you get the nudges, just when the horse gives the subtle signs, and then all of a sudden it's really loud, and you
Mhm,
did miss the super subtle signs that may not have looked like what we might label as a sign, but
mhm.
there's always that. And so the more keen you get on honing in on your consciousness and being able to be present, whether it's with your horse or in your own life, you can, sometimes address it before it gets really loud and uncomfortable and is maybe just quieter and slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah. So what did that process look like for you when you went to decide to say, like, I am in fact going to work with horses again? Like there that piece of like, this is who I am, this is what I do, I'm going to do it differently, but I'm still going to do the things because that is just part of who I am at my core, which I feel like is most people, definitely all the presenters that we have at this event coming up. But um was that process in itself like really hard for you, or did it feel like I'm certain and this is how it's going to happen, or was it like a
Uh,
little bit?
See, both. It was at first, it was the pendulum swung big time. At first, it was I didn't my muscle memory, I totally geek out on, not just the horse's nervous system, but the human nervous system and our patterns and how our experiences shape us and how we have even just slight pre-cues within our own bodies before we follow through physically. And it was really hard to consciously know how I wanted to change, but subconsciously I was still going through the patterns of what I did previously.
Hmm.
And so my pendulum went way over here to where I was I went far on the other side of just being and not asking a whole lot of the horses, not pushing them. I wouldn't even introduce anything that stimulated them or escalated them. I which a beautiful thing that came from it, I really dove into positive reinforcement and what that looked like and felt like for the horse and myself. I was way on that end, but then I still love to do things with horses. So then I started, then when I got comfortable in that space, going back to doing, so competing, I love showing and ranch riding and training some performance horses, but then started to see the struggles in the doing because I hadn't created clear, consistent boundaries, like within my own emotion of wanting to be more conscious and softer and kinder. I also then became less predictable and I was more emotional and wishy-washy.
Hmm.
So even I remember I had a sweet Mustang that I planned on sharing about who got really snorty with me. He was like, "Whoa, whoa, uh, why are you being so floaty around me and not, confident in your choices and direction?" And I found that in my competition horses, and so I was like, okay, I need to find now that I'm okay, like we can still do things, but have that sweet spot of empathy and consciousness and breaking things down. And so it the pendulum then swung, I will say then the other way, because I was like, oh God, I need to compensate for how wishy-washy I was and emotional. And then going back into the competition world, you had people's words coming in, "Oh, well, what are you doing?" Or, "Okay, what happened there?" Or, "Why are
Hmm.
you doing that?" And so then back the other way and then judged myself. It was like, "Wow, that was a horrible choice," and didn't feel good either. And so it took a while to find a space in here that I could honor my horse, honor myself, maintain my integrity, but still do the things that brought me joy and gave me and my horses purpose.
Hmm. What was the quote that you said before we started that I loved?
That functional woo and authentic do.
Yes,
And that
I
was
like
I
that.
credit that to my best friend. I was actually at a clinic in Arizona, and I'm always texting her words or sayings. Like, she
Mhm.
actually has, like, a Google Notes page on her phone of the random she knows if it's random or doesn't entirely make sense that it should probably go into that space. And she helped me. I was like, how do we word what I do and put it in something that'll be easy to remember and inspire people?" And she's like, "You are functional woo and authentic do." Oh, I like it. So I've taken that with me, and
So
I think it
perfect.
I think it explains kind of what I do very well.
Yeah, and it's so funny because what's starting to happen, and I don't know if I'm gonna put it on merch or what, but from every interview I do with you guys, there's like this one phrase that comes out, and it's like it's so perfect and it wraps up the conversation so well. And and so that will probably be yours for sure because I was like, oh, it's just it's like the intention I set before was I want that and it just keeps popping out like little sticky notes. I'm like, yes,
Yes.
there's Dana's. So to for this the end question that I'm asking all of you guys is like if you wanted to see, one thing, which I know that there's many, one thing within the industry shift, like what would that be for you if you had a magic wand?
If I had a magic wand, I would love in the industry, I guess just exactly what we talked about, having it, because I think there's a lot of people even up top and the big time clinicians, big time competitors. I think there's a good number of them that want to do things differently, want to feel brave enough or safe enough to go there, but are afraid of jeopardizing their reputation and their income and their business. So I would love to have the people feel like they were supported, and not just at the top, everybody, anybody who owns a horse or owns an animal or something, where like in our equine society and community where we work with the horse, but that we could feel brave enough and supported enough to change and to explore, to experiment, to get weird. You know, are you? There's a lot of people who want to get weird and then be allowed to do so long enough to prove that it works,
Mhm.
that it enhances things. That's one of my favorite things to do is to get weird with people who, like, I sometimes feel like people will call me up, like, all underground, undercover. They're like, "Can you come teach my eventer to target train?" And then we use the dopamine released from hearing that cue word to de-escalate them in the show pen when they're doing their, extended trot down the diagonal where they usually
Mhm.
bunch up. Like,
Mhm.
that was the one. If I could change one thing, it would be that we could invite more people to go there and to get
Mhm.
weird.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, is there anything else that you feel like you want to say before we wrap up? Anything that wants to come through?
I took some notes. No, I think this is perfect. I am so excited to be part of the event. I think you are incredibly brave and and amazing to be, because this is a big undertaking.
Mhm.
Um, just not just in getting us all together, but just organizing an event in general, the
Yeah.
actual logistics of it
Yeah.
and the time and the energy and the heart that goes into it. And I am incredibly honored to be a part of the event, uh, and to be able to get to know the others that are in the lineup and to be in the same space as them, and then to do just what we're talking about, invite other people to come to this space and to feel free to get weird and explore themselves and explore their horsemanships. And like you said, that's a big thing for me. You can go to a clinic, people come to a clinic, we spend 3 days, they're in this capsule of awesomeness and it feels good. And when they see the differences and they feel free to experiment, but then you get set free back out into the big bad world. And you can kind of, right, we're products of our patterns and our past experiences. You go back to the very barn that you've been afraid to explore at, and you
Mhm.
lose some of what you experienced over the weekend with the clinician. And so I love where you shared about, empowering people to go forth, and even if it's just a slight shift to feel comfortable and supported. Like, even though
Mhm.
we're not physically there, that you have this support energetically and behind you, and that you're going to offer a space for them to revisit, to be reminded, because
Mhm.
that's, we can go through these transformative experiences that can show us what it can feel like and look like, but it's the hard work comes afterwards. And
Mhm.
so if we have the resources to continue to check back in with what can it look and feel like and be reminded, it gives us the fuel to continue to work towards changing the patterns and making a change for ourselves that feels better.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I know it's so interesting because it's like, oh yeah, people are asking me, "Oh, are you gonna be one of the presenters?" And I was like, no, like it feels like the shift that I've had in my own career is if I'm given this vision to do something, and I love supporting other professionals, it's like it
Mm.
really lights me up. Like I love doing what I do, but also I'm like, but I really like this part. And it's kind of been my thing where it's like you're kind of a connector, you connect these people together and these communities together. And so my own personal growth is coming from like, holy, how am I going to make this happen? Like, this is crazy. And it's happening. Like, it's all happening. Like, the money is invested and the things are moving along. And so, yeah, it's like an entirely different personal growth stretch for me in a totally different trajectory. So, we're all doing the things, the uncomfortable things. Um, if people want to find more about you, where's a good place for them to find and learn more about your stuff?
Well, currently I'm in the process, to be honest, of totally reconstructing, as far as my presence, online and resources to get a hold of me. So really right now it's via Instagram at
Mhm.
Riding Ravens, or on Facebook, just under Dana Lovell at the moment, and working towards making something that feels good. To be honest, I have started a website. I can't tell you even how many times, and it just didn't feel good. And then all life happened. There's just, this last 2 years has been one really big life
Mhm.
changing event after another. And so I do feel that I'm in a space now where that's going to be different. So because of that, I'm just me on social media.
Cool. Well, that's rad. That's perfect. It's where a lot of people are. It's actually the answer I've gotten from several of you. So
Oh, well, great. I'll
it's
tell you what,
perfect. You're not alone.
I love the parallels of answers. Like, it, for me, that's going to be one of my personal growth things, is to know it's like back to that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Which I know that statement for me comes from all kinds of things, but
Hmm.
I just have gotten a kick out of that.
Yeah. It's been fun. All right, rad. All right. Thank you for hanging out and
Well,
chatting.
thank you for having me, and I
And
can't wait to see everybody in October.
I know I'm so excited. So if you guys are interested in learning more about Dana, find her on social media and then come get weird with us in October. We're all getting real freaking weird, trust me. This is the common theme. That should be the tagline for the entire event. It's like, let's get weird.
Let's get weird. Come get weird with us.
All right, then we will see you soon.
All right, thank you.